I'm very excited to have, wanted to end our conference with a conversation with a new and emerging and exciting leader in Texas in our anti-sexual violence movement. And she is also, not only is she the board president of TAASA, she is also the CEO of the Bridge over Troubled Waters in Pasadena, Texas, which is in and around the Houston area. So we're very excited about that. And so I thought we thought it would be a good idea to have Olivia just kind of talk to us about, her thoughts, what's happening, and just kind of usher us into a new era. So we learned a lot about, here's the beginnings of TAASA. TAASA's been around for 40 years. So now we want to focus on what does it take to move forward. So I'm going to start by, Olivia, if you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I'll get the next question.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. I know we're all feeling a little tired, sleepy, hopefully full. I know I am from the sessions, and so excited to be here. My name is Olivia Rivers, originally from the Kansas City, Missouri area, and I've been here in Texas now for 10 years, serving in various capacities with the nonprofit sector. I studied forensic anthropology, so I actually had no intention of working with living people. I was definitely that nerd in college. I was like, put me in a lab, give me a microscope, let me see the cadavers. And then all of a sudden I ended up working with survivors, the other side. But this journey has been amazing. I've learned so much. I'm still learning so much. I definitely don't know everything, but it's been such a joy just doing this work and then just learning from people who are actual social workers. And it's been a journey, but there's just, I've noticed now in my new leadership role, there's just a lot of things that we can do, so.
And I was going to say, so first I wanted to say hello to those who are joining us virtually. I always forget to do that. And then also, I know that translation is happening. And I just think it's kind of funny because I think if there was a race at this conference into who talks the fastest, Olivia and I would be neck and neck. We both talk really fast, and we're going to try to both talk really slow to ensure, that translation is able to catch what we're saying. So I'm trying to do like 8 things at one time here. But Olivia, I just wanted to ask you, what does being in this movement mean to you?
So I love this work. Obviously, I've been doing it for a while, but I don't like that we have to use the word movement because human rights should not be something we have to move for, that we have to fight for, it should just exist. And so I would love to change that concept that this is a movement. It should just exist. We know that sexual violence is a public health crisis, and I want to get to the place where it's treated as such, Again, it should just be guaranteed, not something that we have to wake up every morning like we're in the fight. And so when it comes to things like civil rights and human rights, equality, equity, all of that, those are the bare minimum, right? Those are the bare minimum things that we're asking for. And so I want to get to that place where we change it from a movement and that we just are existing in a safe, healthy, violent-free world. And so I want sexual violence to be a global priority. I want legislators to take it seriously. I want them to fund the things that need to happen to make sure that we can truly eradicate violence. And I often think of the movie V for Vendetta. Has anyone seen that? Yeah, I love that movie. There's so many quotes, but one of my favorites that I think about all the time, and I feel like we have taken a few steps back in the recent days, but one of my favorite quotes from that movie is that the people should not be afraid of the government should be afraid of the people. And we are continuously doing this work, and I feel like we're fighting for an inch, and we get pushed back, and it's time out for that, So I definitely am hoping that is where the future takes us. And speaking of the fight for this movement, it's also like this work, I want the next 40 years to be easeful. EASE. Why, everything shouldn't have to be a fight. The work that we do, it shouldn't have to be a struggle. If you guys are not familiar, please go to Instagram to the NAP ministry. Trisha Hershey is the founder and the organizer of the NAP ministry. And she talks about that, how we need rest from generational exhaustion. How many of you guys are tired? Raise your hand, not just physically tired because you stayed up late, but how many of you guys are just like, oh my God, I am tired. Some days it's just hard doing this work. And so we really need rest from generational exhaustion because violence has been happening for centuries, right? And we continue to do this. And so it's time to dismantle the system that views our human bodies as machines. You guys have heard that rise and grind. No, go take a nap, rest, let's breathe. Everyone take a deep breath. This work doesn't have to be difficult. It's difficult because there's systems that make it difficult, but it doesn't have to be. So we're not machines, we're divine humans, and we should be able to operate and exist in this world in an easeful way. So.
Thank you. And, I'm Generation X, kind of getting old, and you are a millennial. And I've been a leader in this movement only for about 4 years. I've been in the movement forever, but I've only been a leader in this movement for about 4 years. It'll be 5 years this fall. So I wanted to ask you, Olivia, is there any other observations in leading this work, and even at your organization, or just even as the board president of TAASA, that you have observed that you just want to talk about?
Yes. I think since becoming the CEO, and then I was a director in different departments before, and once I became CEO and I was sitting in rooms with other CEOs, I just realized that the people who started this work are missing from the table. So you think about women of color, those part of the LGBTQ community, those in poverty, immigrants, those that really raise their voices to say that things are not fair, they're missing from the table, sometimes in some of those senior leadership spaces. And so I think we have to kind of get back to that. We need to make sure that those that are leading the movement are some of those original people. We need to make sure that the programs are catered to survivors and not based off of what funders say that we should be doing. I've noticed that even some of the support groups we had at our agency, some of our staff were saying that people are not coming, but then when we asked the survivors, is this what you want? And they were like, no. So it's like, oh, it sounded good to us, or it's something we thought survivors would need. So really asking those questions and making sure that we're getting that feedback from them in a truly authentic way. And we're not just hosting things just because it sounds good or it looks good or because funders are telling us that we should be doing it. And then also thinking about young people who are of college age, but are actually not in college. They're missing from the movement. So I noticed I've been with the Bridge for 10 years, and some of those first children that I was working with as an advocate, they're now growing up, they're going to college, or they're not going to college, they're of college age, but they're still very much being inundated with violence in their communities. They're seeing it, they're experiencing it, but there's really nothing that's crafted for those. We have a lot of, amazing programs for, in the high schools and then in the college, but what about that population of youth that are not going to college and are still experiencing it? So I think sometimes we just have to really look at our mission statements, who we're supposed to be serving, who we're truly serving, and making sure that we're serving them in an authentic way that meets their needs. And then we need to make sure that our staff, our leadership, and our board of directors look like the people we serve. I've noticed that a lot as well. Becoming the CEO, I have a very pale board, right? And a lot of them are identifying as men. And my last board president, he was an older white gentleman, and he did say to me, he's like, we've got a lot of white men. And so there was someone that approached him that was like, I would love to serve in the board. And he said, yeah, we don't need more of me on the board. And, he was, because we've been talking about diversity and everything. And so we're really looking at what diversity means. Because if a survivor has a grievance and wants to speak to someone in our leadership, they should be able to see someone in our leadership team, someone on the board that they can identify with when they walk into that space. And so it's really important that I've just noticed as I've been talking to other EDs and talking about board things, it's like, man, we need to really make those changes and make sure that we are a true reflection of the communities we serve.
As you say that, I had several people come up to me at this conference that didn't know that you were our board president, that didn't even realize, oh, well, we have the first Latina leading the Texas Coalition. And they were very, very proud of the fact to have the representation of the top two positions, in this work in Texas is a Black woman and a Latina woman here from Texas. So I think that's really great what you're saying. And I also love what you said there about board membership, really reflecting the community. I've been around different, communities. I'll get called in because of leadership issues, and that's true. The leadership structure does not necessarily reflect the community, and the board doesn't reflect the community. And I think that's a problem everywhere. And I'm so excited to hear you talk about that. But in the vein of leadership and future, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what does that look like? What do you think that needs to look like? And what are some words of encouragement for us from your perspective on what we need to do when it comes to leadership and sustaining our staff, sustaining each other, and also just leading the work?
That is a wonderful question. I think for me, one of the reasons that I stayed in this movement is because early on, someone identified me as a potential leader. So I was able to get mentorship and have another leader invest in me. And I've noticed in the nonprofit sector, that doesn't happen a lot. We don't focus a lot on mentorship. You see that everywhere in corporate America. When it comes to nonprofit, we're focusing on the mission. And what I found is sometimes we get so mission focused, we forget about the frontline staff that are doing the work. And I've learned, and I've even heard, even at this conference, like some of the ways that we have failed in my agency in doing that. And it's just continuing to be eye-opening how stepping into the role, some of the policies that I was able to look at that were created years ago that we're still implementing are just bizarre, right? And so I would say first, mentorship and leadership needs to happen. There's so many incredible frontline staff at our agency who I want to see grow and I want to see take on leadership roles in the future. Also as a millennial leader, and I know that there's a lot of CEOs that are nearing retirement, succession planning is critical. I have already thought, I'm only a year and a half into being the CEO. I've already thinking about succession planning, which directors at my agency who I know could if something happens to me, we jokingly say in the board meeting, if Rose ever gets hit by a bus or marries rich or wins the lottery, who's stepping into that role? And I've already thought about there are some incredible young directors, young leaders, even people without titles. I'm they could easily take the helm and run and change this organization for the better. So I think I'm always thinking about that, but then you also have to take action, investing in them, talking to them about their professional and personal goals. So that's really important. And then I think in this movement, you can't have a mission of ending violence in the communities when you are allowing toxicity to happen in the workplace. So I think we have to be real as leaders in the movement to address that in a very authentic way and being able to hold yourselves accountable when you err in the way of leadership. So I know some old school policies. Just an example, one that I came across was our bereavement policy. And I only noticed it because individuals, relatives had passed away. And a lot of people, especially in this day and age, they come from other states, right? Not everyone's from Texas, right? So I know if something happens to my family, I have to fly, right, to get to Kansas City, Missouri. And so an individual on our team, their relative had passed away, and our bereavement policy said 3 days for close relatives and 1 day for non-close relatives. And the person was obviously I don't know what to do, blah, 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 so I was well, why don't we just let them take the time that they need? What's the big deal? And it's well, there's the policy that says close relatives, 3 days, non-close. And I was what the heck is a non-close relative? It listed out your mom, your parents, your siblings, it listed out what a close relative was and what a non-close relative was. And I was well, first of all, that's dumb. Because if you're anything like my family, when someone passes away, my mom expects me to be in Louisiana, even if I have not ever met that relative, right? So if I had to go to my supervisor and try to defend who a close or non-close relative is, so I said, well, we need to change that policy. So we did. We ended up changing it. We stopped labeling what a close and non-close relatives, and it was just maybe 5 days across the board. But then also it's what you need, right? We're not going to be picky about it. And so when you start micromanaging those things, our staff are not able to really focus, number one, on their own health and wellness, but also not on the work. If they're having to worry about, oh, I get for this relative, I get, one day. So there, so we have to get to a place where we stop putting policies over people. It's just, it blows my mind, some of the things I've read in our policy. And, again, I'm not a perfect leader by any means. There's still so much to change, but it's just that when we notice those things, we have to address them. That we have to really say Yet maybe it made sense 20 years ago, but it does not make sense now. There's another policy that was related to like coming into the office, but it was based off of the old building we were at. And so you really just have to like clean stuff up. You have to like clear out the cobwebs of the policies in your agency, you know, and really look at that. And then I've noticed, I feel like obviously the pandemic happened and we see a lot of the great resignation, right? We see that across all industries. And I feel like definitely in the nonprofit sector, it's easy to say, oh, you know, people are wanting to work remotely from home and that's why they're leaving the nonprofit field, or people are wanting, you know, more opportunities, and morale is low, right? Morale is low in the nonprofit sector right now. Where there's a lack of communication. I know sometimes I will say something in a leadership meeting and then weeks later I'll hear a frontline staff, they'll repeat the message, but it is not how I said it, right? So things are not getting trickled down, you know, the way I intended it. And so I think as leaders in this movement, we have to say like, I might have a message, but I also need to make sure I'm taking that message to frontline staff. And then you're also needing to hold your leaders accountable when they're not passing that message along. I had a director who shared in a meeting that she had overheard staff feeling like they couldn't take a lunch break. And so if you're thinking about your non-residential staff who were like taking walk-ins, right? And so I guess the staff member maybe was on her way to lunch. There was a walk-in. She got paged. She thought she had to just go serve this client, do a full assessment. And so that's when you have those conversations like, who told you that? Who told you you can't go to the bathroom? Who told you that you should be skipping lunch to serve clients? And it's again, it's this idea that the client, put the client first, which yeah, I'm not saying we ignore the clients, but I'm also saying we don't have our staff sitting in assessment holding their bladder for 2 hours, right? And so I think we have to be careful about, and it kind of goes back to the work that is done in the NAP ministry. It's like, why do we wear overworking and overtiring as a badge of honor? It's not honorable to be the last one there every day. It's not honorable, you know, to just be grinding and grinding and grinding. So I'm a PK, I'm a preacher's kid. So like turn to your neighbor real quick. You ain't got to touch them. Turn to your neighbor and say, I'm tired. I'm tired. Yes, I am tired. And so I'm damn tired, right? So damn tired. So it's time to stop wearing overworking like this badge of honor. You know, it's time. And what happens is we as leaders, we audibly celebrate and honor those frontline staff that are saying like, oh my goodness, Julie stayed so late. Oh my God, she's such a hard worker. But also guess what? Tanya can be a hard worker too, just because she has balance and boundaries and says, I have to be gone by 4 o'clock. Right? It doesn't matter. And so we have to stop glorifying and honoring these advocates who are grinding. And, you know, it's killing us. It's killing our movement. It's killing our staff. And so we have to like think about that. And then I would just say, we're working on it. It's not perfect. And so I mean, trust me, there's a lot of things. I'm so sick of incentives that are meaningless, right? Don't give me a pizza party, right? Because guess what? Pizza party is not putting gas in people's tanks. It's not paying the rent. It's not doing any of that. And I've gone to my finance director several times, like, okay, what needs to happen to bring, you know, this entry level wage up? You know, pay your people. Let's start paying our people. What we need to do as leaders is talk to funders, because I did find out, I mean, I came in day one, I was like, all right, let's bump our pay up. And of course my finance, she's like, that's not how money works. In a nonprofit sector, you can't just bump everybody's pay up overnight. But we have to start raising our voices as leaders and telling funders, when you restrict me, when you want more programming, you want people to do more work, but then you're also not giving me money to pay these people to do more work. What message are you sending? And so I think it's very frustrating to learn that sometimes even as a leader, your hands are tied in that way, because we are a nonprofit. We're not bringing in a regular profit. You can't just say, hey, because we made X amount of dollars, let's give people raises and bonuses. You're not able to do it with, you know, the freedom that you can in a for-profit world. So I think leadership, and I know our amazing like TAASA and TCFV, they're great about talking to legislators about funding, but sometimes they get it wrong. They're like, oh, funding the programming, funding the work, but it's like, no, funding the people that are doing the work, right? And so that's really important, because if you're only paying people at a poverty level, and then you're expecting them to come in and talk to people about a budget, and your people are sitting there, we're like, dang, I need to work on my own budget, right? Or how can I tell them to save money when I'm barely making enough to save money, And so it's mind-boggling sometimes that that's kind of the system that we're in. And so that's very frustrating. So pay people. That's and I think I've also heard people say like, oh, in the nonprofit sector, you're doing this out of passion. Also, passion don't pay the bills. Passion don't pay the bills. And so you have people leaving the nonprofit sector, not just because of COVID, right? But because they realize that they can do work and get paid for it, right? They can be, and so I think we just have to be really mindful of that. We really have to be mindful of that. And then of just, of course, again, the toxicity in the workplace. We have to call it out. I will admit that I had to, I'm being transparent, authentic. Once I had to let go a couple of directors, one who actually hired me 10 years ago, because she was causing so much.
Good for you.
Good. It was hard. I was actually embarrassed. I thought people were going to be like, oh my God, here comes this like little millennial girl firing all of these boomers. But it was legit, because they were causing harm to shelter clients. They were causing harm to staff. We had to let go of our therapy director. She was causing harm to our therapist. And I kept hearing these things over and over again. And apparently it had been happening for years. And unfortunately, nothing was ever done. So I'm not saying I came in this hero, but I just was like, this is unacceptable. When I heard what was happening, I was like, it's time for you to go, even though you've been here 25 years. And I was sharing with a mentor, I was truly embarrassed, because I was like, people are going to think that I'm just like trying to clean house. But then she's like, no, you are. You're trying to clean house, and it's necessary in order, because you're going to lose people, right? And we lost some incredible people that I would, that I want to get back someday, but you can't bring them back into a toxic environment. And sometimes it does requiring you to hold people accountable and saying, you know what, you might do good work, but it's not, worth what we're losing or what's happening or how you're affecting people. So it was, I mean, and I don't think anyone on my leadership, well, I know there's people here from my agency, but I love them and trust them. I'm not worried about them. But people, I feel like there's still people that maybe need to, slide out the door, right? Eventually, because you're just not, and I think sometimes we have to realize that once you're no longer being helpful to the movement or helpful to an organization, you should find other work. Right? Just because you've been doing something for 25 years doesn't mean A, you've been doing it well, or B, that you should do it for the next 25 years. Sometimes we grow out of things. We grow out of careers or whatnot. So we have to be mindful of that.
Yeah, and I was going to say, when you said that, Olivia, like for those of you that are not in leadership yet, but I know you will be in our field and in our work. When I first got into the position, again, I've been in leadership at TAASA for 4 years. It'll be 5, which feels like yesterday. But I do remember having that same situation. We had this one person that everyone was afraid to fire, before me, and everyone there was still afraid to fire that person. And I thought, this person is toxic. This person is giving different types of information depending on who's asking. And I just could not have that. So just a word of advice for you all, that if you tomorrow come into the executive director position or the CEO position at your local agency, is William Hall here? He was here earlier from Colleen. He said something to me. We have a joke going, because we were at, I had an employment lawyer come in and talk to the executive directors, and he was saying how he's just going to fire everybody. And so I seen him in the hall, and I was like, you be nice to your people, William. So anyway, he just kind of laughed, and we were talking, and he said one thing to me though in the hall that stuck. And I thought about my experience, and he says, I've been told you fire fast and you hire slow. So when there's somebody toxic, like I pained over that decision, kind of like you said, oh my God, they've been here forever. And I fired slow. Where's Liz? Liz warned me, you need to fire. Anyway, so that's a lesson learned for me. But this person was being very oppressive. I have seen, as Olivia was saying, there are leaders that create oppressive environments in a sexual assault program, which doesn't make sense to me, or a domestic violence or dual, because I don't know how you can proclaim to be doing trauma-informed services when you are creating or providing or supporting or enabling in an oppressive environment. And I think one way to combat that too, when you become a new leader, is to just have transparency of information. What grants are they on? What are the allowable grants? What's the budget? And that's a great question about the salaries, because I did the same thing. We're going to get a big raise. And then I learned, oh yeah, you have to take steps to do that. It takes a little while to do that. But aside from that, with the finance, for those, again, I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna let Olivia. Other thing, if you become an executive director in the near future, know your budgets. I have seen so many times where you have new executive directors come in and have no clue of the budgets, have no clue what's going on. That's a lot of power for somebody who just focuses on numbers. If we want to be trauma informed, we did a session once, trauma informed numbers. That's basically the heart. The point of that story was we have to know where the budget's going. If we are disengaged, intentionally or unintentionally, as leaders, on what the budget is doing, where the money's going, that also can unintentionally create an oppressive environment. So that's just something that immediately when I go and talk to new executive directors, I make sure that they're aware of the budget, make sure that their staff is aware of the budget, their staff is aware of what's allowable. It just creates that opportunity to talk about, to create discussion on, I'm an advocate or I'm a preventioneer and this is what I want to do. And if you have an oppressive leader that's saying, no, they can come back and say, yeah, here's the spirit of the grant kind of thing. So just that transparency.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Rose. What time are we finishing? I'm sorry, 1?
Can sit here and talk all day.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you want to make make your points, and then we can wrap it up when you're ready.
I'm trying to get people on the road. I know people are headed out. I would just say the last thing that I've noticed that I feel is imperative, and I have, a couple of people researching and looking into it, is mental health for staff. EPA is great. It's okay, right? I think our policy was like 6 sessions, and again, you have staff who are living in real life America right now, going through their own struggles, watching the news, seeing everything that is unfolding and happening there. And then they're coming in and dealing with trauma of survivors, again, real life struggles. And we are not taking care of their mental health. Yes, I know mental health is a thing that you have to take care of yourself, but we're not offering enough resources. So what I see in the future of this nonprofit movement, or the sexual violence movement, is also just making sure that there is funding, a line item for mental health for staff. Mental health should be free in my opinion, but true mental health. So if staff want to part, and whatever that means for them, not therapy is not for everyone, right? But whether it's, fitness path, I don't know, whatever it means, and then of course, then asking your staff what a healthy environment looks like, and just getting ideas from them. And so I really believe in investing in corporate mental health. And it should just be a line item in the budget, because again, people are hurting, and it's our staff. And what I've learned when I became CEO, part of me was like, oh, I don't get to do, direct service anymore. There's definitely elements of direct service that I missed. But what I did learn is that my new role as an advocate is to be an advocate for my advocates. And as long as they're hurting, I'm not doing a good job as a leader. As long as there is, miscommunications, I'm not doing my job as a leader. And so I think as a leader, and also we have to start identifying people as leaders with or without a title. Because again, there's some incredible leaders at my agency that I'm like, damn, they're going to be amazing one day. I can't wait to see them grow. And I'm like looking at people like, oh, I hope you take my job, because I'm not going to I probably won't be at the bridge for 25 years. That's not a goal for me. But it is that when I leave, it's in a better position than when I took the reins. And I think we should all be thinking about that. And then another thing, leaders, real quick, 'cause I know it's almost time to go. Stop being, stop worrying about people stealing your shine. Stop worrying about people other people, like, being as amazing as you. There's enough room at the table for everyone to be good leaders. And so I think sometimes people, I've noticed that leaders are like, what's the word I'm looking for? Not offended. I can't think of the word. Yeah, egotistical is a good word, but yeah, they're just like, they're worried about other people coming in and taking their job. The thing is, you don't have, as a leader, you don't have to know it all, but you need to hire the smartest people. I should not be the smartest person in the room, but I want to make sure that we hire well, that we hire the brilliant people, that we hire the passionate people. And then the thing is, there's so many skills that can be learned, but there's also so many skills that are just inherent, right? And so you just want to hire well, surround yourself with good leaders. I don't care if in my director's meeting someone knows more than me. They better, I hope so, right? And so we have to stop worrying about people like, oh, I can't hire them because they're too smart and they might come after my job. They should be, and you should be supporting that, right? So we have to just like get rid of ego. There's a saying that says, if you're leading and no one's following you, you're just going for a walk. So you have to really make sure that people are willing to trust you. You have to have an open door policy. You have to make sure that people feel comfortable talking to you. I don't care what your title is. I want people to know that they can come to my office. If they don't like the way that something is going, if they don't feel like they're being heard, I want them to not feel like they have to go through manager and then director and then, no, come to me. Hey, what y'all changed? What y'all said? That was stupid. I don't like it. Right. And I'm like, okay, tell me more about that. Right. And it's happened before and I love it. I love hearing it. It doesn't hurt my feelings. It doesn't offend me. So we have to stop being offended as leaders. We have to start hearing what our people have to say. So anyway, that was my point. Mental health, pay people more, be a good leader, remove toxic people from your workplace, and just be an advocate for your advocates because they deserve it. They really do.
And I have to say, y'all,
Oh, yes. Okay. Bilingual ones. Yes. Pay your bilingual folk and stop asking people to translate stuff for free. I know we do it. I've been guilty of it. So I'm talking to myself too. Like it's easy to be like, hey, we need this translated. Stop that. Stop it.
But thank you, Olivia, because I know that Denise, who came to me with this bright idea, a good idea. Denise was like, we need to, if we're talking all this shit at TAASA, let's walk it. So Denise came, together. It was her idea, and we came up with an infrastructure to make sure that we get bilingual pay. And it's not just Spanish. We have a couple of other languages at TAASA that we are doing bilingual pay for. But I wanted to give you a shout out because you were one of the first agencies to ask Denise to come about that question.
Back there.
Yeah, so thank y'all for doing that. And that's something that we try to talk to everybody. But I just wanted to say in closing, because it's time, we want you all to get on the road and not hit the Houston traffic. But Olivia, I just wanted to say how inspired I am by just your vision and what leadership means to you, because I have been accused of not caring about executive leadership. I do care about executive leadership, but I am always going to be on the side of those with less power and frontline staff. Like I told one leader in the movement, I'm not going to say where, I said, the ones who are going to save your ass is frontline staff. So you need to treat them accordingly. So I just wanted to say that I love that your spirit is that. I love that you are leading this work with us. And I just feel like the future is bright. And I think that you're going to make a tremendous impact and legacy with just a few words you said here. So I'm looking forward to the next 40 years with your vision and your leadership. And thank you so much for last minute coming, for being the board president, but also that wasn't last minute, you all voted her in, but for agreeing to share just your wisdom and your brilliance with us at TAASA and with our conference attendees and also with our virtual attendees. I heard that there's a lot of folks that wanted to listen in, and they are listening in. So thank you all across the state who are listening virtually, and thank you all who stayed to the last minute to listen to the brilliance. I knew that you all were going to love her. We love her. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Rose. Appreciate it. Bye, everybody.